Hi, my name is Tallman, Trask. I'm the Policy and Advocacy Director at the Alliance for Gun Responsibility. Like Maureen said, I want to run through some of the legislative changes that have happened this past session that are going to be coming into effect between the summer and answer any questions that you all have about them. As was mentioned earlier, about 10 bills were passed this year that have some impact on gun laws in the state. I'm not going to run through all of them because there's sort of a lot of depth that I'd like to go into with a few of these in the short time I have. So I'm going to run through 6 of them that really have the most impact on domestic violence, mental health, and firearms and intersections thereof, because I think those are sort of the most applicable for this conversation that we're having today. So those 6 bills that I'm going to run through are a couple that have been mentioned already. Those 5027 and 1225 were both mentioned in earlier presentations. There's updates to the way that we treat firearms at the scene of domestic violence incidents, as well as extreme risk protection orders. I'm also going to talk about some updates related to incompetence to stand trial and the Involuntary Treatment Act and how we treat firearms at the intersection of firearms ownership and 72-hour holds. And then additionally, very quickly, about concealed pistol license requirement background check changes and some changes to our protection order system in general that update SAPOs and DV&F and things like that to be more in line with existing extreme risk protection order statutes in order to make the system sort of more streamlined and simpler to use, and also to really make sure that we're taking the best practices that we've learned via these systems and applying them to all of the orders across the board. So I'm going to start with 1225, and this is the one that I'm going to go the most into depth with, because I think that 1225, this Community and Law Enforcement Protection Bill, is really the one that applies most when we're talking about domestic violence and firearms and the intersection there. So what this bill does is it really makes sure that we're removing firearms upstream in the process as early as we possibly can from incidents of domestic violence and from situations like that. Specifically, this bill requires that officers seize firearms from the scene of a domestic violence arrest and incident at that point. Additionally, it requires them to seize any firearms in the point, that are in plain sight or that are found as a result of a lawful search. Those firearms are then held for a minimum of 5 days and returned after necessary legal processes have been gone through involving protection orders or other charges. That's not all that it requires, though. It also requires that officers request that consent to take temporary custody of other firearms within the home, and to separate the parties and inquire about any other firearms that the abuser may have access to, in order to make sure that what we're really doing is removing firearms from that sort of incident and from that situation, at least for that period of time, while we figure out what's going on, and in order to remove those risks. Beyond that, it requires documentation, and like I said, it requires that those firearms that are seized at domestic violence incidents are held for at least 5 days before they're returned, in order to make sure that we're giving victims of abuse time to file protective orders, as well as court processes time to work themselves through. We've also passed another major bill that changes a lot of protection order systems this year, and I apologize for running through a lot of information quickly. I want to make sure that I get through everything here. But we additionally have House Bill 1786. This bill addresses our protection order system more broadly. It updates a huge number of protection orders in order to bring them into line with the existing ERPO standards for firearm surrenders. So that includes ex parte firearm surrender orders. It changes the standard of proof to a preponderance standard. It requires the immediate surrender, and it requires service by law enforcement when there is a firearm surrender order in place. Those are all things that we've learned, and I'm sure the folks from the unit can talk more about how those things have impacted ERPO filings and DV&F filings in King County. And those are things that additionally can assist with the whole process of making sure that firearms are not staying in these protection order situations. Beyond that, we clarified extreme risk protection orders. This bill was talked about a little bit before. It's Senate Bill 5027. This bill clarifies a number of things about ERPOs. Along with language clarifications, it allows for 24/7 filing of petitions. It additionally changes the way that we address ERPOs and juveniles to explicitly clarify a process for that, and to clarify that ERPOs apply to access to firearms as well, and the access provision is in all ERPO circumstances, not simply with juveniles. Those are big changes that we've recognized are necessary as we've sort of implemented the law in King County and around the state, and we've seen holes or areas where there are struggles to solve these problems. And two bills here, really quickly. 5205, which is a bill that just closes a simple loophole. In Washington state, as I'm sure everybody knows, there are perimeters on firearms possession for convicted felons, people found who can't stand trial because of reasons of mental illness, but incompetence to stand trial was not previously a prohibiting factor in the law in Washington. So simply adding that for folks who have a history of violence was an important element. Additionally, House Bill 5181 is a fairly large change to the way we address behavioral health concerns within the context of firearms access. This bill establishes an automatic 6-month prohibition on firearms purchase or possession by anyone who has been held for 72 hours for observation under the Involuntary Treatment Act as a result of likelihood of harm to themselves or others, which specifically is a clear way to reduce suicide risks, but also plays into this domestic violence conversation that we're having, as we've talked before about sort of the intersections of suicidality, as well as domestic violence and substance abuse, and how these things can all play together. The last bill I want to talk about is maybe more specifically one that applies in some really specific contexts here. For years, the state of Washington has been doing NICS has been doing courtesy checks for the state of Washington for gun dealers. When somebody in the CPL comes in to purchase a handgun and is exempted from the general waiting period that has been established in order for those CPL holders to take possession of the firearm immediately. Recently, the FBI announced they'd no longer be doing those checks, which left us and our law in a state where that meant that anybody with a paper CPL, regardless of validity, would be able to acquire a firearm at a dealer without an immediate background check, because of the way that our system is built as a partial point of contact state. This bill, 1465, removes the exemption for CPL holders in specific reference to that exemption from background checks at the point of sale for handgun purchases. That's an important thing, specifically because those point of sale background checks in 2017 alone caught about 1,000 people who had a CPL but failed the background check that was established at the point of purchase. If we had let this law slip, those 1,000 people would have been able to take possession of a firearm prior to anybody running a check. And I know that was a huge amount of information to file through really quickly with a bunch of bills, and I apologize for running through it so quickly. I would love to answer any questions anybody has, either now or later. Maureen has a question for me.
What if someone wanted to help pass laws next legislative session?
Yeah, so two things on that. One, a lot of these bills, so 5027, 1786, these bills that updated our extremist protection order system and updated our protective order system, only came into existence because of the implementation work that we've been doing, conversations with law enforcement, prosecutors, judges, that really make a difference in terms of knowing how the system works in real life and where it breaks down. Beyond that, you can talk to us and come testify. We'd love to have everybody down there to talk about bills. Yeah. Were you open up through everyone behind you? We run through the website as well.
You can spend 5 minutes on the website.
You can spend 5 minutes on the website. Does anybody have any additional questions?
That first bill you mentioned, that hasn't passed in a law yet, right?
1225 has passed both chambers of the legislature. It's sitting on the governor's desk waiting for signature. It will come into effect in sort of the normal period, 90 days after signature, or whatever the appropriate time is, so sometime in the summer. So, sort of piggyback off what Adam was talking about with Disarm DV. We've also recently developed a new resource. This is a site that just went live this morning, actually. It's designed to work alongside a lot of other resources that are available. And this site, gunprotectionorder.org, is specifically built to attempt to get folks, both petitioners and respondents, information they need about extreme protection orders and the process. As it currently exists, it does a couple different things. It's a couple different things. It first makes sure that folks are aware of how extreme protection orders work, what the process looks like in real life, and guides them through it in a really, attempts to do it's a pretty plain language and simple way, so that people can get a really basic overview at least of what they can do and how to do it. Beyond that, it builds into a pretty extensive frequently asked questions section, which attempts to give, again, both petitioners and respondents information that they may need in order to sort of understand how the process works. And beyond that, it builds into a glossary of terms, which allows, being a little slow, a glossary of terms, which is really a pretty, extensive glossary. It includes a lot of things that maybe aren't directly extremist protection order related, but can help folks understand how the system itself works as they're going through this process of dealing with civil court actions that they're generally not used to. Really what the goal of this site is to provide people with that information. We're still working on a few of the kinks. We've got some annotated sample petitions that are going to go up there as well based on the petitions prepared by the Administrative Office of Courts in order to really make sure that people aren't walking into these circumstances blind and they've got a little bit more knowledge. After this, if you want to take a look around the site and send us any feedback you have, anything you think is missing, we'd be happy to integrate it. I think that it's always a work in progress to make sure that folks are getting the information that they need, and we'd love to make sure they have it. I think that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Tallman. Now we are going to let you all do some of the talking during a working session. And if Sergeant Ferguson and Theresa want to come on up here, they will tell you about all the fun to be had.
These wonderful things called orders that are out and about. The problem is orders are pieces of paper that are signed by a judge, and until they get from the judge's desk into the hands of the either defendant or respondent, they are just pieces of paper. So we're going to talk about issues and see how we can fix issues. With that, being from Spokane, in the state of Washington, we're the other side of the tracks, or the other side of the Cascades, it's all the same, you understand. We're not sensitive about it at all. But if you do look at a map of the state of Washington, and you put the Cascades up there, we are on the right side of the state, just to be if you're curious. With that, we don't have a super fancy DV&F unit. We can say that over in Spokane. With that, but we had enough stuff go on that we have created a family justice center. So I supervise 2 detectives, 4 officers, and we are co-located at the YWCA with the city and county prosecutors, which means our prosecutors can sit in their cubicle and go, "Hey, Sarge," and I'll yell back, "What?" and they get a question answered. Or our officers will say, "Well, this law says this, and this law says this, and how do we get it?" And then we get 3 attorneys to get their heads together and get an answer. With that, but we're there and we're communicating. Our advocates are community-based advocates, so they're confidential, so they can't give us everything. But we've developed such a level of trust, they're convincing the victims to talk with us. We had one case that came through about a year and a half ago where the victim came in and she was scared to death. She knew she was going to die. He was going to kill her. That's all there was about it. He made it clear, we talked to the cops, "I'm going to kill you." And finally, after 6 months of just pure hell, she came into the advocates and said, "I can't take this anymore." And she told the advocates said, "Well, you got to tell the cops." And the victim looked at him and said, "What part of, if I tell the cops he will kill me, did you not understand?" And so the advocates came and asked if we could talk off the record. Well, it's kind of like a red flag. He's mandatory arrest, mandatory reporting. And I said, "Now what the heck? My supervisor's 4 blocks away. I don't care." So we did. And we got information and we went around and we built a prosecution without her assisting us. In fact, we actually served a warrant on her phone against her will, ripped her phone and found out that he had contacted her 667 times in the previous 11 days while there were 2 orders in effect. And it's a great fun long story, but it doesn't take a big, huge unit or a big system. It takes a couple people willing to make a change. Real simple one of the things we do is called focused deterrence, and that is where we confront the offenders in jail before their first appearance and explain to them that DV is not like anything else. We are going to make your life miserable. You keep this up, and we're focused on changing the defendant's behavior, and we do, or we make their life miserable. As it goes along, but we're not looking at blaming the victim or changing the victim. We are looking at changing the defendant's behavior. Well, we have to review the reports, find out why they were arrested. When we read the reports, we use the lethality assessment. Question number 4, does he have access to a firearm? If that's in there, we have a big checkbox we put on the report. If there's anything in the report about having a gun, we have another check. And then we do a real quick DOL check to see if he's ever bought a pistol and pawned things, if he's ever pawned a gun. If there's evidence of a firearm, we get a hold of the prosecutor for first appearance. So when they're in first appearance and they're asking for bond, and the person's getting their order to surrender, and they say, well, I don't have any guns, Your Honor, I'm going to sign the declaration on surrender, the prosecutor can say, well, contraire, we have evidence right here. It's mentioned in the report, it's mentioned in the lethality assessment. You bought a gun a year ago and you pawned one 6 months ago. We don't believe you. You signed that, we want a $10,000 bond. You cooperate, now we'll go with your normal, well, ORs are normal, but we'll go for a lower bond. So it's just that communication, and that takes one cop and one prosecutor to get on the same page. One advocate, one cop. Just those little bits of communication to start building your own firearms unit with that. So to start with on this, you guys should have pretty colored cards.
They have sticky notes.
The sticky notes. Everybody see sticky notes?
Can we do that? Can you just raise? Can you raise your hand if you work within Pierce County? Okay, great. Can somebody who raised their hand move to this table here so that we have somebody who works within Pierce County? We're gonna do like some table work groups. Somebody just really brave and just move to one side. Okay, perfect, thank you. So we're gonna do some brainstorming together, and I just think it's nice to have some diversity at the tables. Yeah. I think we'll start probably by identifying some of the barriers, and I'm going to be, per the instructions written in bold, ruthlessly timekeeping. So you're going to hear my phone alarm go off.
So, which one do you want to start with? So, entry of order to surrender weapons and extreme risk protection orders. So what we're looking at, what are barriers? What causes problems? Why don't they get entered correctly, timely, accurately, other things? And for this exercise, we will use the faded Skittle pink color, which is different from the aquamarine Caribbean ocean color. So we'll use the pink cards on there, and what I want you to do is have a quick discussion at your table and come up with 4 or 5 barriers. What makes it hard? What makes it impossible with these orders to get into the law enforcement database? Where are the screw-ups? Where does it break down?
OTSW is order to surrender weapons. ERPO is extreme risk protection order. Are these being signed in court under the protection orders? Are they correctly being signed and entered under the mandatory or discretionary relationships? Are there problems with getting them into the databases? What are the hang-ups in Pierce County along these lines? And then we're going to make you report back, so you better write something.
So grab those pretty pink. Start right down here.
Summarizing some of these, looks like we have a lot of people identifying problems with incomplete paperwork. So maybe they're not signed or dated, the orders, maybe the boxes are unchecked, the proof of service maybe sometimes isn't filled out correctly, needing to have all the information on the orders. Then there's some entry problems. If there's not a directive, so if it doesn't say this particular law enforcement agency should enter this into WASC, if that's left blank, it doesn't get entered. And then, of course, the separate problem of when those problems exist, there's not a problem solver to deal with that. There's not a particular person designated to go into that problem. Some issues with the, is the information, the box checked in the order, but not a separate order to surrender weapon issued as a separate order, and having problems with the discrepancy there. Some service issues, which I haven't gotten yet to write it, but service issues here, petitioners having to arrange for service, law enforcement only attempting a couple of times, so reissuance after reissuance, incomplete information on the law enforcement information sheet, which also goes back to incomplete paperwork, a couple issues with tribal orders, issues with extreme risk protection orders, so staff not able to, there's not a designated person to assist families with that. People aren't totally aware of the process yet. Issues with what happens, how do we follow up and enforce orders to surrender weapons, so there's not a specific system set up for that. More no expiration date, so I'm just looking at that need.
So in further order, if the court's not good enough, it needs an actual Gregorian type date. Say more about yours. Sorry. So the expiration date, what I was saying, I do the entries in WASC for Pierce County, and it needs a Gregorian date. So like the next court date, an actual physical date, or further order of court's not good enough. It just needs a specific date set. It's most common in restraining orders when there's an order to surrender with it. Oftentimes I see further order of the court, and that's just not good enough.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got a bunch of different categories here. Let's move on and have the tables report back. We're identifying issues still, and we're going to just spend a little less time on this, but we're going to go to concealed pistol licenses. What are the issues we're finding with concealed pistol license? Go ahead and start writing down some things on your sticky notes about any problems on any end of it. Entry, knowing whether people have them or not. Prosecutors having that information. Court staff having that information. Go ahead and work together, and we'll identify barriers there.
Having people work together, especially when you throw different specialties into the same mix. Luckily, I was able to finish up my master's degree last year at Wazoo, Go Cougs, and one of my professors, my main professor, like a leading researcher in sleep, wrote a book called Tired Cops. Let me go off and play in the neuroscience realm with that. We were talking about doing domestic violence, doing things in police work, and he gave me the best analogy I've ever heard, and it's probably the worst one, but it sticks in your brain. So has anybody ever gone to the beach and built a sandcastle?
Yes.
Yeah? Has anybody gone back the next day to look at their sandcastle? Is anything there? No. So that's what it's like for law enforcement. We're at the beach, and we're gonna go build a sandcastle, and we're all kind of excited to go out and do our job. We want to do a good job. We get out there, it's like, yeah. And some do it really nice with turrets and little airpods and all this stuff, flying buttresses and everything's up there, and it looks really cool, great. And then you leave for the next day, and you come back and it's all gone. It's like you're never even there. Now you go and do the same thing with an advocate, or a little bit of collaboration with prosecutors, and a little bit of extra work, and now you're not building a sandcastle, you're building a brick castle. And it's gonna last through a couple times. If you build it really, really well, it's gonna last for centuries. And that's the whole point of working together. We will get so much more accomplished and make a permanent change in people's lives instead of a really cool castle for a day. Try to forget that story. All right, so we're at.
Okay, oh, you guys were really good with this ocean blue one. So it sounds like there's not a docket or a review calendar, or maybe there's some concerns around that, making sure people are in compliance as far as coming back to court and asking them about it. But often people are really concerned, lots of people are concerned that this is really on the honor system right now, that there's not follow-up to see if people are actually telling the truth when they're signing declarations of non-surrender. There's no follow-up to make sure somebody's in full compliance rather than, did they surrender one gun, but they have 10 more at home that they're not telling anybody about. They can get weapons elsewhere easily. Concerns about law enforcement safety, real concerns about victim safety when they're the ones having to be the primary reporters, or they're the ones having to ask for the order to surrender weapon, and with no enforcement behind it. Concerns about delay time in it getting into WASIC, and really just a lot of concern about actually having people who are funded to do the follow-up and make sure people are in compliance or doing the research to see if they're lying. A lot of good problems identified there. We're going to move on 4 minutes to talk about service of order to surrender weapons, service of extreme risk protection orders, and removal. We've touched on some of those issues already, but go ahead and work with what color are we working?
Well, I do believe I saw a pumpkin spice color out there. Does everybody have pumpkin?
Nope.
Oh, no.
I think we only have 3 colors.
Well, on the special.
Some people have it. Pumpkin spice.
Pumpkin spice. You guys are really catching on to this. Because I hope you're as good with the solution as you are with the research.
So part of why we go through and get the barriers and get it out, it's like writing that letter to your ex, you know, the letter that you're never ever supposed to send. Which is why we say do a letter, not like write a text that you're never going to send, because people always manage to send those, and then, well, that's how most of our DVs start, with the cell phone, with that. So yeah, it's kind of, there's a whole bunch of problems, and we could sit here and we could focus on problems all day long, and that's not going to get us anywhere. So what we're going to do is identify these problems that we have here on the service and the categories in that. That doesn't match.
I know.
That's not like the others.
I know. Okay, you guys did great on this. So lots of people concerned about law enforcement not collecting firearms at the time of service, and then to partner and piggyback with that, that there's not a whole lot of funding for specific officers to do that. There's not protocol for it. Maybe concerns about officer safety. Maybe there's not enough officers to do that in outlying areas, especially when it involves packaging and collecting evidence. If it's high risk, is SWAT available to help? The soft approach, like having somebody specifically trained in doing that. So lots of concerns here with actually these two put together. Lack of information, so officers aren't necessarily getting threat assessments, information collected about details of the guns, wanting to know all of that stuff before service but not having a place to get it. A couple concerns about if the abuser is law enforcement, how do you work with that? I'm surprised I didn't see more here actually with the storage and the property management issues. Law enforcement agencies not being able to be prepared to accept the guns. I hear that a lot out of our jurisdiction, like, we can't take these, we can't be storage for everybody. Really a lot of concerns about service. So if the respondent is transient, if you can't find them, if it's on the victim to find all of that information, if the respondent avoids being served, so lots of problems there. Okay, so now that everybody's primed, working together, talking about problems, we're going to start to look at any potential solutions, but we're going to do it in a really unique way. So I'll let Sergeant Ferguson introduce that.
So now that we have all those evil feelings purged out of our system, we are cleansed, we can take that deep healing breath. We are going to work on solutions. But with solutions, there's always limitations, except for today. You have an unlimited budget. You have unlimited personnel. You have a computer that doesn't crash every 2.5 hours. Your stuff is going to work. So, with that in mind, shall we go backwards a little? Okay? Sure. While it's fresh on their mind. So, last one we looked at was our pumpkin one. And the issues that we had were law enforcement not collecting time of service, law enforcement safety protocols, private services, storage and evidence. What if the abuser is law enforcement? Lack of information on these. So, unlimited, you can do whatever you want. Each table will give us 2 or 3 solutions, 1 solution per card. So you can't have multiple things on one card. This is the tricky part. So only 1 solution per sticky note. We're sticking with the pumpkin because, as anybody in this room can see, aquamarine Caribbean sea blue does not go with pumpkin. I don't know what you think of that. So 1 solution per sticky note, and give me like 2 or 3 solutions on this last one we just worked on the service. All right, do we have them all? Okay. This is where we have group participation. So our first solution that we get to look at says access to advanced, well-developed information to retrieve firearms. I think that's a good idea. Maybe. So what we're going to look at and evaluate is whether it's an easy fix or a hard fix, and whether it'll make a high difference, high impact, or low impact. So, on serving the orders, if officers, deputies had access to advanced, well-developed information to retrieve firearms, would that have a low impact or high impact? High impact. Everybody agree with that? Is that an easy fix or a hard fix? Do we think it's really that hard? Medium? So, that's what I'm thinking. We'll do a medium high on that one. All right, next one. Education training for officers about trauma, PTSD, training for law enforcement courts, prosecutors. All right, so real quick on this, part of what our unit does, focus deterrence, we go in and tell these guys to knock it off, we're gonna make life miserable. In our conversations with them, we have talked to them and said, hey, dude, you have any guns? You got a couple guns? All right, you have to surrender them. Okay, I'll surrender them as soon as I get out. Great. Dude sits down, that's why I call defendants. Dude, it's easier, less allowables. And they sit in front of the judge, and the judge starts handing them paperwork, and they start signing it, and they get the declaration of non-surrender, and they sign the declaration of non-surrender, and my officer goes, hey, we just had this conversation. You're just going to surrender your guns. Yeah, I'm going to surrender my guns. You just signed a declaration of non-surrender. I don't know what I signed. All I heard was the judge say, I'm getting out, and it turned into one of those Peanuts cartoons. I would have signed anything they put in front of me. And that's where we realized the whole PTSD, trauma-informed interviewing, not only does it happen with victims, it's got to happen with defendants because they are vapor locked, absolutely maxed out. And so we take the time to explain to them what's going on. So training, we think training high or medium, high or low impact? High, training's high. And is it going to be easier or hard? I guess it would depend how we did it. I mean, if we dumped them into an 80-hour class and said, suck it up, buttercup, you're going to learn all this stuff, it's going to be a pain in the back. If we slowly got it in there, a little bit of time, kind of like ants sneaking into the house, a couple here, a couple there, and all of a sudden they have all this knowledge running around, if we did it the right way, it might not be that tough. But can we go easy to medium fix? That work? And high impact, right? and I'll put it on. Ooh-wee. Okay, so we have classified these all into basically the same thing. Specialized dedicated law enforcement trained to work with a coordinated firearms unit. Task force trained in DV, dedicated officers for service, creating a service team. Team of officers dedicated to service, law enforcement, policy for dedicated officers. Okay, would that make a big difference? Yeah. Is this going to be easy or hard?
Hard.
Yeah, really hard. Yeah. Stick that whole mess. That's hard. All right, yeah, they're a little bit off the chart. All right, police department hiring domestic violence advocates and screening advocates to assist with service. So getting advocates more involved and all that, think it'd make a big difference?
Yeah.
Okay, we got a big difference on that. High impact, is that gonna be easy or hard? Easy, hard?
Is it easy to hire advocates and create positions for them and fund them?
Well, we don't have them now.
No, but is it hard to do that? But could an advocate ask these questions and communicate it as a part of their regular job function potentially? Are there ways to get releases of information, connect people together to make that happen on a one-on-one basis potentially?
So maybe high impact, not too hard, but not easy. Medium, yeah, is that?
Yeah.
High.
High impact. Yes.
Partnerships as opposed to.
All right, more investigators and knowledge of what to collect. All right, you guys want to hear a funny story? So here we go. We have a perp. A perp is a bad guy, a jerk. Not somebody you want to bring home. And perp gets served an order by one of our officers. Proper service, takes it, officer leaves, fills out his little form, takes it back to the records. Within 15 minutes, there's a call from the victim of violation of an order. Perp went to her house, kicked open the door, and threw a copy of the order inside her house and said, F you, B word, right there. Well, that's a pretty good order violation, right? We have the order you just received, we've got his writing on it, we got, that's pretty bad. So what did our officer do? She goes up, takes the report, he goes up, looks at it, and said, yeah, that looks like he did it. I'm gonna put it for my body camera. Yeah, that's what it says. Hands it to the victim and walks away to go do his report. You dingbat, go back and get that. So, knowing what to collect, knowing what to collect. And, we're not perfect all the time, we're not wrong all the time, we're just somewhere in the middle on that. All right, so more investigators and knowledge of what to collect. Low or high impact? High impact and easy or hard to fix? Easy, hard? Easy. Could be body, then. We're getting stuck in medium land, I think.
Specific storage.
All right, task force has a secure storage unit for weapons. That would make a difference, because if you had a place to put all the weapons, that'd be good. So probably a high impact. And would that be easy or hard to fix?
Initially easy.
Easy, but limitless funds.
Yeah.
Easy at first, just put it in the evidence unit, and then it gets harder as space fills up. Yeah, everybody agrees? Easy at first. Yeah.
So right next to Spokane, there's a little town called Cheney. Anybody went to Eastern Washington University, go Eags. And they got a nice little police department there, a bunch of good hard-working fellas. And they get a order and an order to surrender firearms. And their respondent on the order owns 114 guns of various sizes. They got nothing, because they just use a room in their department to put all their evidence. They have absolutely no idea what they're gonna do, where they're gonna put all these things. And then the order got off the next day, so he didn't have to worry about it. But, oh my God, it was a day of panic. Like, whoa, what are we gonna do with all this? Centralized database with info for all parties. Oh, I mean, you can find out about all the orders on everybody at any time, and any jurisdiction can find out, and does that make a difference? Somebody could just, hey, my name's James Dillon, wanna go on a date? I don't know, let me check my account. You got an order. No, I don't wanna go on a date with you.
High impact?
Yes.
Super hard, huh?
Yeah.
Reading new databases is really hard. How about getting political will and buy-in from all law enforcement, the law enforcement union, all jurisdiction, all courts, all prosecutors, all city officials? High impact?
Yeah.
Super hard. All right, let's move on to concealed pistol licenses. Let's talk about solutions, and we're gonna go quickly through this one. So let's get our green sticky notes if you have any left.
So remember, the issues were this: we're out of state CPLs, access to gun registry or DL, advocates don't have access, don't know how to find out if someone has one. Enforcement, if you have a CPL and then commit a crime, there's no way to take away a CPL. And DOL backlog, unreliable system. So every table give you at least one solution on that beautiful Mountain Dew green with unlimited resources and unlimited budget.
Okay, how about a CPL that's actually like has a barcode on it, a picture, not just like a piece of paper with someone's face. Yep.
That's a really good CPL. In their input it into the computer, when they buy it, right then and there, not sent to somebody. Immediately.
And then it could also be their post with the guy behind the scenes without having to actually get the card.
Their picture and name and everything is
Current and correct. No, they're literally a piece of paper. I don't even remember. But there's no space on there. And 4 tickets. Or like a public association. When I say public association,
All right, while we're doing a little categorizing and getting things in the right pile, the last little comment we had about a centralized database for everything, would that make life so much easier if everybody could access the same information? All right, so our first solution in dealing with the CPLs is a unified law on concealed pistol licenses across all states for public database of who has CDL or CPL across all states. High impact, low impact? High. Easy or hard? Hard. High and hard. Okay. Sure. Okay, so we're looking at like a dedicated CPL department with access to WASIC and NCIC. So different people aren't learning how to do it every day. Licensing database with easy revocation. Someone within the judicial system that completes the paperwork to have CPL taken away. Whoa, wouldn't that be nice? So everybody aware that, you have your order violations and you have a couple convictions and it becomes a felony, right? Less than half of our order violations get arrested on the street, get booked as felonies when they are felonies because there's no criminal history when they run the criminal history. It's not until they get into court, the prosecutors look it up through JIS, say, yeah, we got 7 convictions on this person. You pick up your III criminal history, there's nothing. Biggest problem, reason that happens is officers will cite and release on order violations, and if there's no fingerprints done, and there's no fingerprints attached to that court case, it doesn't go on to a criminal history. So if you know cops, and they're gonna arrest somebody on order violation, hook them. Hook them, hook them, hook them. All right, so let's make stuff a little bit cleaner with the CPLs. High impact, low impact. High? High impact? And really hard to do or easy to do?
Astronomically hard.
All right, fair enough. Because sometimes it is. I think we have a pattern with databases. Daily updated databases, access on holders, all databases current and correct. Allow quick ability to put into systems. So basically, we need to revamp the whole CPL database. Would that have a high impact or low impact? High. And is this going to be easy or hard?
Hard.
Yeah. That cluster.
Okay, database accessible to advocates, DOL accessed by all stakeholders. Raise your hand if you have access to the DOL database. Nice. And are you records? Records, law enforcement, anybody from a prosecutor's office who has access to the database? Okay. What do you guys think? High impact, low impact? High? Okay. What do you think? Easy or hard? Easy. A lot of people have that access, right? It's a matter of getting that information transferred between people. Prosecutors' offices, paralegals have access. If they don't yet, they can get it. Law enforcement has access, records folks have access. It's just figuring out how it's appropriate to transfer that information between individuals. I have access, and I'm an advocate, but I'm technically a paralegal, so there are ways to get that information. It's just a matter of figuring out who can have access within your team. And if you don't have somebody in your team, finding somebody outside your team who's able to share that information freely, depending on what your work titles are. So I'm gonna put it in kind of easier, yeah? I mean, it's something. Because we need something in this category, you guys. CPL with picture and barcode like driver's license. This is delicious. High or low impact? High. Hard? All right. Okay, should we move on to blue? Review calendar, compliance, aquamarine, ocean, seafoam. This is all about enforcement. All right, is it on the honor system, follow-up, victim safety issues, delays in the system? Oh, you guys are on top of it. Okay, just a few minutes.
Compliance
So are we talking about the
having a protocol?
moving so fast.
See people writing on
Just for.
I don't think I affect your camera.
Not in the least, no.
Print it out.
Thank you.
The guy signed it right there. It said, "We go on."
But yeah, there's no
Any more? Going on? Going back? All right, so our first easy solution is having a compliance docket. Think that'd make a big difference? Yes. Yeah. How easy or hard is that going to be to do? Is it doable? Yes. Just a little bit of reorganization? Yes. Reallocation of resources? So we'll give that a high impact. Easy. All right, another suggestion is having a protocol, a model policy that everybody can follow so that everybody doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. High impact, low impact? High impact?
but easy.
It should be. It really should be easy to do, shouldn't it?
Email it to you. I mean, it's not easy to implement, but it's easy to get hands on, right? This is all enforcement.
So penalties for non-compliance, bench warrants for non-compliance, prosecution for non-compliance, failure to failure to appear at compliance docket, bench warrants for that, making non-compliance criminal. All of this is enforcement. High impact, low impact. High, easy or hard. Medium. Medium? Yeah. Sometimes, right? Sometimes it's making that connection with the prosecutor. Sometimes it's way hard. Because it's working out laws and stuff that we're still even working on a year into it, right? Figuring out how to hold people accountable on a civil calendar. Okay, advocates or paralegals to review, assist for correct information to help better service and complete better service, coordinator, investigator to find out whether someone has guns or CPL. So these are kind of ideas to start the information gathering process, but short of a full firearms unit. What is that, easy or hard? Medium. Could be one designated person within the jurisdiction, that's a lot of work, but high impact or low impact? High impact. So medium and high impact. These are my favorite. Funding for a full firearms enforcement unit. We need a task force like King County. You could call it DV&F and I won't be bothered with High impact or low impact? Hard or easy? Hard. Okay. We do have some things that you guys are going to take away today that are in this high impact but easy category. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Entry of orders, court level, time of entry, databases. The issues we're looking at are awareness of IRPOs, helping people with IRPOs, making sure that separate order to surrender weapon is signed by the court, incomplete paperwork, issues with service, problems with entry, who to go to when you have a problem. So let's think of some solutions around there on our pink flamingo.
I'm gonna go with fuchsia. Fuchsia work. A military order in NCIC. Do you know they're supposed to put them in? There's DOD directive, they're supposed to put military orders in NCIC. I've never seen them. Okay. Just want to make sure we weren't left out over on the other side of the tracks.
And then that all gets done.
What else, guys?
Reach for the sky, right?
Some people might appreciate it.
Be sure to
help. I think I was following up. Not enter the check data, because it's just entered as an or actually work ranking.
Because if the judge issues you a court order, until it's been served on the other person.
Correct. But we're talking about getting, all we're talking about is this.
Anyone else?
It's all of those things, you know, right?
This one is about just like and entry by law. And entry. Both. Okay. Okay. Both. There's a lot.
Yeah, essentially, the judge became serving 5
Well, I want what they were saying about enforced check in county is that if they just make sure that if something like that, and whatever, they'll change it.
You know, it's funny on the whole grand scheme of things with our orders, and you look at us trying to get personal service, and then if we can't get personal service, we have to publish it in the newspaper. When's the last time somebody revisited our service laws on orders? I mean, people have full relationships on Facebook before we get an order served. They're Facebook official and Facebook broken up, and we can't even get the order out of the court. So we should have a Facebook order page. And when you log on to Facebook, just check to see if you have any new orders against you, we'll consider that service.
All right, everybody ready? Okay, checklist for judicial officers of what all is needed and determining the judicial entry process for judges and clerk's office and law enforcement to use. So we're talking checklists. High impact or low impact? Checklist and bench cards, right? High impact or low impact? High, easy or hard? Easy. Where am I going? High impact, easy. Okay. Okay, somebody whose job it is to review all the court paperwork, quality control, make changes, looking at all the paperwork, making sure it's entered correctly, like a paralegal or an advocate. It's different suggestions here. Actually, there's several of these. Some people suggesting advocates, some people suggesting paralegals for this. But really quality control, making sure the paperwork's done correctly and all the information is getting inputted into the system correctly. Low impact or high impact? Easy or hard? Some people saying easy. Does everybody think that's easy? Medium. Okay, we'll go in medium. That's a lot. We did a lot of stickies in one there. More attempts for service, more dedicated officers to conduct service. High impact or low impact? High. Easy or hard? Hard. Okay. Electronic orders. High impact or low impact? Easy or hard? Easy. Woohoo! Did I go wrong?
Somebody help explain this one. Victims coming forward or to even go to a DV advocate or call law enforcement. Somebody explain that one. Who wrote this one? It's a good one, but I don't understand it, so. So is this, no one wants to admit it. Victim effort to get help, victims underlined, even coming forward, or to even go to a DV advocate or call law enforcement. Is this, victims are reluctant to come forward? Is that what this is? I don't know where to put this. Okay, we're gonna make this hard. Low impact, I don't know what it is. Okay, do you want to review? And the idea was that we would come away today with some action steps. You guys got some.
And that's really the whole point, is if you look at the amount of things that have a high impact are pretty easy to do, and even medium to do, they're doable. And a lot of things are just changing that mindset, changing that whole, this is the way we've always done it type concept, and say, maybe there is a better, maybe there's a more efficient way, maybe we can serve people a little bit better in reevaluating your stuff. So, I mean, we only came up with like one impossible thing, and that one went off the chart down there. But it's good. I mean, there are solutions. It's just getting people together, people from different branches, you know, having the courts involved, the commissioners involved, the prosecutors involved, even the defense attorneys should be involved in this to make it easy, simple, and thorough so that we can get this done right. So, all in all, I mean, great job. We got a lot of positive things and things that should be easy to do on that.
Don't let this go to waste. You guys take pictures of this with your cameras.
We'll send it.
They'll send it out because this is really good work you guys did. You came over. I turned my ringer back on so I could hear the timer. Yep.
All right, thank you, everybody.
All right, my name is Theresa Hopkins, for those of you that I have not met yet, and I'm the CEO of the Alliance, and we're just so happy to have been invited and to have partnered with the Pierce County YWCA. I'm pulling this together, and so I just want to say thank you so much for your dedication to the work that you're doing, for taking the time to be here today. I know it's a lot, especially on a beautiful day like today. So speaking of beautiful days, 3:15, it's going to be traffic pretty soon, and it's gorgeous out, so I'm going to be super short. A couple of housekeeping things. Please fill out your reviews of the workshop. We hope to do more of these around the state, and your feedback is super helpful to us. This day counts for 5 CLEs. We're going to take care of that on our end, so you don't have to worry about doing anything. And then I just again want to thank you all. At the Alliance, yes, we do work on passing laws, but we are equally as dedicated to making sure that the laws are implemented. If laws aren't implemented, they're not going to save the lives that we know that they have the capability of saving. So thank you for your partnership in that, and please know that we are always open to feedback. The more we can hear from people that are on the ground doing the work, the better we can make the policies, and the better that we can know how to help advocate for resources for you and your local communities to be able to move forward with effective implementation. So please do not ever hesitate to reach out with requests, suggestions, or just asks of support and help, because we really want to be good partners to all of you. So thank you. Any last questions from anyone before we go enjoy the sun? Okay, and thank you to our regional unit, thank you to Maureen and our staff, and have a great weekend. Thanks everyone.